yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello and welcome to Jen Taylor Rerouting, where being rude is never acceptable, but sarcasm is welcome and swearing isn't always a bad option. Let's get started. It's Jen Taylor Rerouting, and I'm here today with Angela Wagner. You can find Angela at angelawagnercoaching.com, and we'll have that, of course, in the show notes. But Angela also has a podcast, just like I do. So to find me, go to jentaylor.net, and you'll find anything you ever didn't want to know about me and more. And to find Angela, it's angelawagnercoaching.com. Angela, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome. It's so exciting because we don't know each other. And so every time I have somebody on that I know, I think, oh, it's going to go so great because I know them. But then the people that I have on that I don't know are so much fun because I get to learn so much. So I am super excited about this. You are a coach. I've been on your website and it's pretty awesome. And I've listened to bits and pieces of a bunch of podcasts so I could try to get a feel. And so check out her podcast now that she's on my podcast. So Angela, you do coaching. Tell me how the coaching started, because I don't want to go into what you do quite yet. I want you to tell me about the coaching first.
Okay, well, it kind of relates to what I do.
Okay, all right. I figured. Let's just tell me about it and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good. So I started teaching yoga years ago. I guess I won't get real specific about that, but the style of yoga that I teach is it's very physical, but it's also very mental. And so a lot of I would go to trainings and I would just have these like life-changing moments. And I really, really was able to do some personal work that changed the course of my life in a positive way. And I wanted to share that with other people beyond just in yoga class, because there's only so much you can do in a yoga class. People still obviously are working out and they're getting in their bodies and you have to teach them alignment and all that stuff. So I started to I went to a coaching training. One of my yoga colleagues started a coaching program called Yoga Life Coaching, which was really based on all the work we had done with our teacher and other works of coaching. And so I went to that in 2010 and started creating some programs within this yoga studio that were coaching programs. So it's just kind of been my side passion, and I've integrated it into yoga. And then this last year, I decided to take it online because I really wanted to be able to share it with more people than just yoga people in Dallas.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So now I get how it all worked out. So you became a yoga teacher when and how? How was that a passion?
Yeah. So in college, I was always really interested in fitness, and my mom and I would go to step classes when I'd come home, and we were the fitness divas. And I always looked at the instructors and was like, I want to be, a step teacher one day. And so that's really how it started. And then I started teaching and I got my personal training certification right after college. And so I was doing that on the side at night after my job. I was working in advertising and marketing, and I just loved it. I loved it. I was teaching spin and what was it at the time? I'm trying to think. It wasn't high-low, step and all kinds of things, boot camps. And my coordinator at the time said, I really need a yoga teacher. And I was like, well, I've been going to classes, but I'm like crazy, stressed out chick, like high energy. Like I could never teach yoga. I'm Italian. I mean, my maiden name is Barisi. Like that's not a fit. And she was like, no, go to this weekend training. I think you'd be great at it. So I went to the weekend training and I loved it. And I thought I could probably teach this in the gym. And so I started to add that in. And then I just ended up falling in love with it. I think I liked the connection more than I got from the fitness classes. And so I just kind of took it from there.
From someone who's taken all of the classes and I am super extroverted and, I don't know I'm pretty laid back actually. So I wouldn't say high strung, but high energy.
Yeah.
I would have thought the same thing as you did. Like yoga would not be for me and I love it. So
Isn't that such, do you do like a power yoga style?
No, I haven't done the power yoga. I've done the hot. I've done a whole bunch of, I don't know. After I had kids, I did like a Pilates class and it was like a yoga Pilates thing together, but it was more like burning fat type stuff. It was, but it's really fun. You're right about the connection with the teacher and even the other people, although not in hot yoga. I don't want to connect with anybody in hot yoga. But that is a really interesting way you got into it. So you're doing marketing and advertising and doing this on the side. How did you make that shift?
Yeah, it's so funny. I get asked this question a lot. It was so long ago because it was, let's see, I graduated college in 1999. So I opened the studio in 2004. So it's kind of all in between there that it happened. I don't exactly know. I mean, I know that I loved marketing and advertising, and I actually really enjoyed parts of my job. And I ended up moving to Dallas for a boy who I'm still friends with, but you know how that is in your early 20s. And I didn't love the company I was with. It was very, like, the boss was just very, how do I say this? He was, I don't even want to get into it, but just wasn't an environment that was healthy for me. And so, but I loved the people besides him. So I loved like learning, you know, the graphics and the printing and just the way that the advertising agency ran was very fascinating to me. And it was a small company of maybe 12 people. So I learned a ton. I got to really use that side of my brain that I loved. I loved branding. I loved just learning about all that stuff. But then when I would go teach my spin class or my yoga class is when I would really like feel good about life. And I felt like I was really helping people, where my job in Dallas at the time was restaurants and high fashion. And it was really just a lot of stuff that I didn't connect with. I mean, if you didn't have a $200 Gucci belt, then who were you? And I mean, I've never been into that kind of stuff. So I really struggled, but I'm so grateful for that, because when I ended up opening the studio, I had all these skills about, you know, doing the business side of things. So anyway, I got laid off from that job. We lost the account, the restaurant account that I was working on. I couldn't find another marketing job. So I said, okay, I'm just going to go full on fitness. And I taught at 8 different gyms around DFW. Yeah. I actually found my fitness bag in the attic the other day, which was completely destroyed because it used to, I mean, this is back when like cassettes, like I had to bring like tons of like CDs and cassettes around for all my music. I was just so funny how things have changed, but it was exhausting. I loved it, but I wasn't making enough money. So I did that for about 1.5 years. And then my dad said, why don't you, what could you do with this and your other skills? And I said, well, I'd love to own a studio, but I don't know how to do it.
So let's go back to something, because you've mentioned your mom and working out with your mom, and now you just mentioned your dad. So where did you grow up and how did you grow up? Were there siblings, issues growing up, anything? Fill me in a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. That's where my parents are born and raised. I have a sibling, Tony, who's about 2.5 years older than me. And then we moved to a suburb of Boston when I was 12, 7th grade. So kind of lived up there. And then I went south for school because I was like, I don't like the cold. I'm not a cold. I can't handle it. So, yeah, my mom is always into fitness. She ended up working for Weight Watchers for about 12 years and being a leader and helping people lose weight. Because when she had quit smoking, she gained a ton of weight. I say a ton, not a ton, but enough. And my dad never really loved his job. And so he really, one of the things my parents always instilled in us from a young age is do what you love and the rest will fall into place. And so I think because he was kind of in a job that made him good money, but he wasn't passionate about it, that's all he wanted for us and still wants for us. So my brother conducts operas and I own a yoga studio. We're definitely not your typical kids.
That's awesome though. So when you kind of were working and struggling and loving it, but not, and he said, how can we make this happen? He didn't want you to fall in the same trap that he fell into.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm so grateful because nobody would have ever given me a loan. So he basically gave me the loan and said, here, fly. And he really never, I don't want to say didn't get involved, but he really didn't get involved. And not in a way of like, he wouldn't if I asked him, but he really trusted me to do it. So that was kind of cool. Very cool. And, you know, I look back at that time and it would have been so easy for me to kind of go along a path of getting, you know, high intense marketing job. And I mean, I'm very like high strung and anxious and I'm not anxious now that I have kids. But I've always been like you said, high energy and go, 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 go. So I always just think like if I had been in that position, I think I'd be suffering a lot right now, honestly.
Between the job and just naturally your personality, that combination
Absolutely.
of those, yeah. But the good thing is that you were able to take your background and your degree and all of that knowledge and use it towards your own business. So how helpful was that?
That was really helpful. And the two jobs I had were incredibly helpful because they were both for companies where you kind of got your hands dirty and you got to do a lot of different things. Um, yeah, and that was one of the things I missed when I was in the gym full time for a year and a half was my favorite part was connecting with people because that's just what I love. I love to share, I love to connect, I love to learn about people. But I also miss like that other side of my brain, like the numbers and the branding and the creation. And so I knew like the gym and personal training and teaching classes couldn't be all that I would do. I couldn't sustain that. Plus I had to borrow money from my parents just to pay my rent.
Yeah, and then that gets stressful financially. Even if you absolutely loved every aspect of it, that you still do need to make a certain amount of money. And you don't want it to become something you don't love anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that can happen, and it does happen in our industry quite a lot when people go to full-time teaching, whether it's yoga or fitness, because they take something that they love, like a passion, and then like I was running around like a crazy person and you're making, anywhere from $20 to $40 and maybe 50 if you're lucky per class, which when you add up all the time of transportation and then your gas and just energetically. I mean, I would just go home in between a nap and just be exhausted.
Right. So you started up the yoga, and how did that go?
What do you mean?
Well, when you started it up, what were the struggles with that? How
Oh,
was
with
the process? Hmm.
the studio? Yeah. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I was 26. Like I look back and I'm like, I had no business doing that. um, it's really pretty cool to look back and see that. And I'm glad that I was so young because I felt like it's like I didn't know what I didn't know. Now, as I'm turning 40 this year, it's like there's a different level of, I don't want to say fear, but sometimes fear in failure and kind of knowing some of the challenges that come up. I remember people saying, like one of my mentors from the Y said, don't open a studio. Oh my gosh. Because at the time, it was like when yoga started to become more popular and people were opening studios versus it just being, something that was new at the gym. And so she was like, the market's already so saturated in Dallas and everyone I know is failing and just don't do it. And I remember several years ago her writing me and saying like, I'm so impressed because there's not many that have been around for 13 years now, certainly not like mom and pop shops. Some of the bigger ones, but um, yeah, but the struggles, I mean, were just not knowing what the hell I was doing, quite honestly, and I think I focused on the wrong things. Like, sometimes I would get really caught up in like the aesthetics of the website or the posters or this or that, because that's the world I lived in. And it's like, no, really, I just needed to be getting my butt out there and getting people in the door.
Sometimes I think not knowing is the best thing that could ever happen to you.
Totally.
Because you don't know to be that afraid or hesitant, or what, you don't know that you're making mistakes. You're just going out there and doing it as it comes. So I kind of applaud that in you, the guts to do it. And then also just not knowing, ignorance is bliss sometimes.
I agree.
So now you moved to you're still in Dallas, clearly.
I am.
So you liked the move to Dallas, and you moved there for a boy, you said. So
Well, so I didn't actually like the move to Dallas. So isn't that funny? Because I was living in Austin, which for people that know Austin, it's like the coolest town in the world. And it is so much more my speed and style. And it's not image conscious in that way. And there's a lot of young people. So being young and not even being just young, like now I would love to live there, but it's beautiful aesthetically. There's just hills and there's so much stuff to do outside. Dallas is very flat. And at the time there was just not a lot of culture and arts and things like that. It's changed a ton since I've lived here. But yeah, so the guy that I moved up here for, we ended up breaking up, which was a very amicable breakup, but I really never liked Dallas. I got really depressed and I was going to, a therapist, and I was on medication, and I just felt really lonely. And I felt, especially when we broke up, because I was like, oh my God, I'm in a city I don't like. And this is just isn't my jam. So my parents kept saying, come home, come home. And I'm like, but that's not really my home. Like, I don't, I went to high school there. So I just felt like I didn't really have a place to be. But for some reason, I stayed here. And then I got a condo, and I kind of built a life and set down some roots, met a guy, which turned out to be a disaster. But learned a lot from that relationship. And he helped me start the studio. And he was a big support system for me. And so, looking back, I hate to regret anything in life, because I really feel like I've learned from every person and every situation, and, take what I can learn and move forward. So
you did start dating him. I want to touch on this a little bit because you've mentioned it to me. And you started that with him, and it was good. And you guys are planning to get married, correct?
Yeah. So we were together for about 2.5 years, and he moved in with me in my condo. And then we had our wedding planned, and it was like maybe 3 months before the wedding, and it was in Chicago. Everything, my parents had like prepaid for everything. It was crazy. And this was back in 2006. So it's kind of interesting now to tell the story, because for so many years I was just like, I couldn't even function when I told the story. And now it feels like someone else's life almost. But yeah, he just came home one day and said, I can't do this. And I was like, what do you mean? So I was like, we were just at Target getting things for the table cards, and you're playing, like he had gotten an apartment in Addison, which is about 20 minutes north of us, and he had fully furnished it and just moved out. So that was a really tough time, because it was year 2 of the studio. Financially, I'm very like, I especially like as a woman, I'm like, I don't need money from a guy. Like, I want to prove myself. And so I was very hesitant to ever take any money from him or let him pay for stuff. But it got to a point where I was so exhausted with the business and everything. He was like, you have to let me help, or this is going to ruin our relationship. So I'd gotten to a point where I got more comfortable with that. And then he took off, and I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do now? Plus my heart just hurt so much. And he was he worked from home. He owned his own business. And so he was at the studio every day. He was checking in all the clients. Everyone knew him. So, I mean, I had to send like an email out to my newsletter, saying, hey, here's what happened, and please don't mention it, because the studio was like my safe place. And now I didn't want everyone every time they came in asking me about the wedding, or where's Steve or whatever. So that was a pretty low point in my life, and I almost closed the studio. I came so close to just saying, forget this. I looked at what my friends were making, and I thought, there's no reason for me to be suffering this way. I'm just done, and this is a sign. And my dad just begged me. He said, just don't. You are so close. You are so close to making this successful. And so what he said was, drain the bank account, whatever money you have left, do everything that you would ever want to do. He said, make a list of everything that you want to do, because I want you to try everything. And then if you feel like you've done everything and you still want to give it up, then fine.
I think I kind of want him as my, is he adopting? Oh my gosh. That's pretty outstanding, because I can understand where you were at emotionally. I mean, basically, so like 3 months before you were planning on getting married, you it's like a getting left at the altar type situation. Yeah. With a new business and merging your lives. And I mean, I can't even imagine how that would feel, especially after you mentioned that you had been, by yourself and doing this all and not loving Dallas, and kind of it wasn't great before, and so now you've gotten it at least to this point to have it all kind of the rug pulled out from under you. How awesome of your dad.
I know. I mean, I really my parents have been my 100% support, and in every way, like in a very real way, and encouraging me to do. I think he just saw like, this is going to be a good thing for you. And I mean, I was to the point where I literally would sleep. I would be on the couch all day. And then my only job, I told myself every day, was to get my butt to the studio, teach my classes, and go home. And like, I got to be best friends with the lady at Jamba Juice because when I'm really, really upset, I can't eat. And so I would just go to Jamba Juice and get a smoothie every day. That's all I ate. And it was kind of neat because several years later, I was at, this restaurant up north by where I live right now with my husband. And we were married. We didn't have kids at the time. And I walked in and there was the woman from Jamba Juice working at this place. And she remembered me and I remembered her. And she was like, oh my gosh. And she saw John, my husband now. And she's, I'm so happy for you. And it was just this like really neat moment in life of being like, our paths crossed again. And it just shows you, that's why I love connection and people, because she made such an impact on me and helped me through that, just in my daily Jamba Juice journey. And I obviously made an impact on her. So it's just kind of cool.
I love that. So, okay, so business starts in 2010. You kind of got left at the altar. That sort of sucked. What did so your dad said, drain the bank account and try everything. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You can move on, but at least pull out all the stuff. And you did. And so what happened with that?
So it's kind of interesting. So this was I guess it was 2006, 2007. So it was right before the 3-year mark of the studio. And I wanted to make and this, granted, now this sounds so silly, but I wanted to make this professional video. Well, at the time you had to hire a professional videographer to do that type of thing. And it was I remember I paid $3,000 for it. It's so funny. Now you're you would just do it on your phone. But it just was the technology was so different then. So I did that and I rallied all my students to come in and record that. And we rebranded the studio. So a friend of mine was a graphic designer and she gave me a really good rate and her husband coded. So they redid my website and I really wanted everything to be top notch because that's, that was my passion besides yoga, obviously, but I really wanted it to look professional and fun and really have the branding fit what I wanted. And I remember at that videotaping, I got up in front of everyone before we started and I told them what happened. And I said, some of you remember this and some of you are just here now, but I just want you to know that when you pay your membership fee and every time you come in here, you're supporting a small, I don't think you guys realize what that is. That exchange of money and energy and time means so much to me personally. And it was awesome, to just be really raw with them. And I I was crying and I just said, I really want this to work. And I was about to close and here's where I am now. And if you can just rally around the studio, if you love this place, please help me tell people, come, do all those things. And that's exactly what happened. And it was kind of crazy. I remember someone later telling me I was about to quit my membership because I never came. And I kept it for almost 3 more years just because I wanted to support you.
I hope she came to some classes.
He came to a few. And he had money. He was a lawyer and stuff, but it's just neat. So I don't know. I guess it was just this awesome lesson because for me, asking for help and support was never something I was good at, but it showed me how that can change your life and being vulnerable and open. And I think, I talked about that a lot in my yoga classes, but I was still pretty young and I hadn't been through, I had a great childhood. I don't have any sad stories from that. And so this was kind of the first real kick in the tail that I had in life. And so I think I was brought down to my knees in a way that I needed to be, which is why, I don't want to say I needed to be, but I just think that for me and for everyone, if we can experience the total opposite of what we want, then when we have what we want, we appreciate it at such a different level. And I just learned so much. And I also learned a lot about what I did wrong in that relationship. So I went to therapy and, it was so easy for me to play the victim role because everyone, my group loved me. And so obviously everyone was screw him. But then I started to do a lot of personal work around, okay, well, there had to have been red flags and this couldn't have been a total surprise. Let's be real here. So I got to really investigate and I spent a good 1.5 years at least, maybe longer, on myself, really figuring out who do I want to be, as a woman, as a partner, as a business owner. And that's some of the hardest work I've ever done. But I can tell you today, it's the reason I'm as confident as I am. It's the reason I'm the wife that I am. And it's certainly the reason that I'm the mom that I am. And it's not that I'm perfect by any means, but I just think, gosh, if I hadn't gone through that, I'd be a totally different person.
Which is amazing. So you have kids and a husband that you've mentioned. So tell me about meeting him. You're going through this journey with the YogaSport. So how did you meet him? How did that all happen? Tell me the story.
It's not that sexy. So it was in, oh gosh, he gets so mad when I can't remember dates. So I guess I met him, I think it was late 2008. So it was, yeah, about 2.5 years after this whole thing. And we met on eHarmony, which at the time, now it's like, everybody meets online, but at the time it was so like, it was not taboo, but anytime I'd say we met on eHarmony, people would be like, oh, that's okay. Like, don't be embarrassed. And I'm like, I'm not. It was really weird, but we were kind of proud of it. So he teaches golf, and at the time he was actually playing professionally on a local tour in Dallas, and I was running my yoga studio, and I had a rule to not date any clients because I had dated one of my yoga students from the gym, and then obviously we broke up, and then he stopped coming. And so I kind of learned early on, like, not a great place to do that. And so I just felt like I didn't have an outlet to meet people. So we met online and we hit it off pretty instantly. So
All right. So now you guys got married.
we did.
And you're one of the early eHarmony successes.
That's right.
So for those of you out there online dating, it can happen.
There's hope.
Otherwise, you would have taken the last decent man available online, and we don't want to believe that. So
No way.
you get married, and the business is open like 5 years at this point, and doing better. The rebranding.
Yes.
And then did you guys decide you wanted to have kids, or did you just want to wing it? How did that conversation sort of come up about starting a family?
Well, I think we both knew from the get-go. That's one of the things I love about online dating is like that kind of stuff, the big deal breakers are set out there from the get-go, which I think is actually good because it's like if someone doesn't want to have kids and I want to have kids, like let's not waste our time. It's just like why get into this whole emotional connection and then to have to give on that one is I don't think not something I would have been willing to do. So we knew already that we wanted to have kids. I was, I think, 31 when we got married. So, of course, everyone starts to talk about your eggs and you're getting old and blah, blah. But we really wanted to spend a couple of years together. We wanted to buy a house. We wanted to enjoy each other. We got engaged after 10 months and then married. I don't even remember a year. So we'd only known each other maybe a year and a half when we got married. So we didn't want to have kids right away. So we waited and then we couldn't get pregnant. So that was kind of challenging.
Right. Now I've been through this myself, so I understand the challenge. So you started Infertility?
I did. And looking back, it's funny. I always tell people, like, if something doesn't feel right with your doctor, change doctors because I don't even know. I'm trying to remember the math on it. I want to say I wasn't quite 35 yet, which is when advanced maternal age, which is when you're old, I guess. And we had tried for maybe a year, maybe not even actually tried for a year. Maybe it was only 6 months. And she was even a couple years younger than I was. And she didn't have any kids. Not that that matters, but she was kind of going off textbook, what she had learned in medical school saying like, okay, well, the stats are this and blah, 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 and you need to get going and blah, blah. So she suggested fertility. And now my OB was like, oh my God, I never would have sent you that early. But, so we kind of dove in and we did, medication, and we did IUIs rounds, and then we did IVF, and none of it worked. So it sucked.
Yep, I did everything up to IVF, and at that point, there's all these like day surgeries people, if you haven't gone through it, you don't understand. Like the medication makes you feel crazy, and your sex life becomes regimented, so it's not even fun anymore. You're like, oh, it's time. It's every other day. I took my basal temperature.
Yeah.
Emotionally draining because you feel broken. Yeah. And like everything woman about you that's supposed to work doesn't. And they do all these little day surgeries to test things like flushing your tubes and taking pieces of the inside of your uterus. And I remember, and I went through about 7 of those, and I was maxed out on medication. And when they said IVF, I was like, I'm done right now. I don't have the capability to do anymore right now. And so you took it further, and still it didn't work.
Yeah, and IVF is, ooh, I'm telling you. I mean, I don't want to scare anybody, but it is brutal. And I remember getting the bag or the box of medications delivered to my door, and it was one of those big shopping bags full, and that was just for one round. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah, I did. And I mean, there's a lot of things you have to do. Like you have to give yourself shots and stuff at certain times. And I teach yoga and I teach in a heated studio too. So that makes it kind of complicated. But I mean, I was having my teachers give me shots in the back room in between my classes. Cause it'd be like, you have to take your trigger shot at 7:30. I'm like, all right, well, one of my teachers was a dentist. So I was like, whenever she was around, I'm like, will you give me my shot? Because you know how to give shots. But it was really pretty crazy. And I'm very open and I share very easily. My husband's always jokes that I'm like the queen of TMI. He's like, I can't believe how much stuff you tell people. But he's not. And I also just didn't feel comfortable sharing this while we were going through it. And so it was a tough time for me and our family. And it was really tough to do my job well because I was like leading a team of people, my teachers and my staff, and I felt just hopeless, and I didn't feel inspired to even help other people in yoga. But I mean, I did, but I didn't, it was like, I couldn't really be my total self. So it was a tough year and a half. It really, really was. And then, it didn't work and I just lost it. I was like, I'm done. I was like you, I was like, let's just, and so we started really thinking about what would life be like without kids, and we'll just take a break. And then that next month we got pregnant, just freaking, and it kills me because everyone's like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. It's because you relaxed, which don't ever say that to a woman, you guys. Because here's the thing. One is after fertility doesn't work, you are not relaxed. You are depressed. You are pissed. It is so opposite of relaxed. It is like, screw the world. Okay. So that's not true. But two, it's also, you don't realize you're telling the woman that it was her fault to some extent. And that's what it feels like. That's not what people mean. I mean, I had a woman who has 4 kids, Jen, tell me, I'm so sorry, you didn't get pregnant with IVF. This is when I wasn't pregnant. She said, God only gives you what you can handle. And I was like,
God.
I was like, you literally are telling me that God is telling you, you can handle 4 kids and I can't handle shit. Like, how is that a nice thing to say to someone? And she thought she was being like compassionate.
People don't, I mean, like you said, I don't think a lot of it is, oh my God, I don't think a lot of it is intentional. But you're like, look, you're broken and God knows it. You just need to figure it out for yourself. I mean,
yeah.
I remember trying so hard because when you're maxed out on that much medication, and literally infertility consumes your life. And when I'm telling you, like, I'm a woman who loves sex like an 18-year-old boy, and I still do. Every day it would be fine with me. And it is a chore that you don't like. It's not fun. And so the most intimate part of the relationship with the person that you love more than anything in the world is now a chore that you're not even enjoying. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't feel good. It means that you just don't want to have to write it on a calendar anymore. And you feel completely broken. Every part of you that's female is not working the way it should. I mean, I remember thinking, am I not as much of a woman as the person that with the 4 kids next? Am I so broken inside that I'm not even as womanly? It is crazy how you feel and how kids. So the fact that you were doing the shots with I can't even fathom that at all. So yeah, and people always do say, I got pregnant afterwards. They told me I couldn't and I stopped. And on my last round of blood tests, they're like, holy cow, you're pregnant. We don't know how it happened. And I thought, maybe that's the problem. Maybe you guys really don't know how it works.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and it was a fluke. And I knew at that point, no one would ever touch me again. I would either later get pregnant on my own or I would adopt, but I was never letting another person touch me in an infertility capacity ever again. And so, I mean, it's not because you relaxed. It's so frustrating.
I know. I'm like, exactly. And like, quite honestly, we weren't I mean, I was in no mood to even have sex. It was so crazy too how it happened, because again, another story of connection, which you got to pay attention to these, you guys, because this is really like, there's a lot of cool stuff in the world going on if we're paying attention. But one of the girls that I trained, she was in my first teacher training class, Kali, and so I trained her in 2008. She was getting married in Austin, and I had RSVP'd yes to the wedding, and we were going to go down for her wedding. And she's just one of those people. She was the first person I hired part-time to help me with the studio, and I just was her teacher and mentor, and I've always had a special place in my heart for her. And I was so excited for her to get married. And then this whole thing happened. So we were supposed to go down to Austin. We were supposed to stay with some friends who had at the time a little boy. And I said to my husband, I can't stay with them. I cannot be around a child right now. I can't. I just can't. But I was like, I can't. Every part of me was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to this wedding. I don't want to go on this drive. I don't want to. But I was like, I have to, because I always say, going to an event like that is not about you. If you don't feel like going, if you care about that person, I remember my wedding day. It was the most important day of my life. And if someone just, it meant the world to me that people made an effort to come. And so I thought, this is about Kali, not about you. So step out of your stuff and show up for her. So I said, we need to get a hotel. And so we asked his dad for points, because we spent like $18,000 on fertility. We were broke. And so, we got a hotel, and it was one of those weddings that was like top notch, fun, unbelievable party. We didn't know anybody there except for maybe 2 people. It was just the best party. So it was like, we hadn't let loose like that in forever. We got super drunk, had sex, and that's when Luke was conceived. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I told Kali that story because, I said, like, it just shows you when you show up for other people what can happen. And I know, like, that sounds crazy and yogic and all out there, but I don't know. I really think there's something to it.
I totally agree. I do. I think when you put stuff out there and you take you're a little bit more selfless. Yeah. And you were in a place where it would have been okay for you to not want to do that. It wouldn't have been selfish for you to say, I just can't right now, because I understand emotionally where you were at. But I totally agree, when you take yourself out of the equation and you do it for other people. And how awesome that you guys got to cut loose and stay at a hotel, because it was probably exactly what you needed, and you were doing it because of your friend. And so, and one of the other things you talk about is that support, and how key support is when you're going through, like, that was your serious journey that was tough, and stay focused on hope and positive things. So who was your support in all of that? How did you do that?
You mean when I was going through fertility?
Yeah.
Mostly my husband. I mean, we did share it with family, but I will say, man, fertility will make or break your marriage. I mean, I was so impressed with, not to say we didn't have tough moments, but I felt that for the most part, we had them together. And that brought us so much closer, because we had to really come to the realization that we might just be us. And my husband was so amazing, because he kept saying to me, look, we said when we got married that we were first. This was us, and this is why we're getting married. We are a team, and we're number one. And we still, to this day, not that our kids aren't the most important thing, but we are like, we have to take care of us as a team in order for our family to function in a healthy way. And so that just meant a lot to me. And anytime I felt like it was my fault, he would just be like, hey, it takes 2. This is us. This is us, 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 us. So, I mean, he really was. John was my huge support. It was a little bit tougher for my parents. They just didn't really know how to handle it. I mean, they handled it in the best way they could, but it's like they were just so sad, and they were sad for us, and it really, like, and they hadn't been through anything like that. So and I did reach out to a couple of friends that had been through it. I actually just got a call from a friend of mine who was going through IVF, and I got a text from her, and I knew it was right around the time, and I thought, oh, this is either the happiest text or not. And it was the not. And so we talked, and she said, like, everything you had said at the time, I get now, and it was like what you had said about not feeling, because I remember saying, like, as a woman, I feel like the one thing I'm made to do, I'm not able to do. And she said, I sort of got it. She's like, but I totally get it now, you know? And I was like, look, I'm not going to tell you any of the BS people told me. All I'm going to tell you is it freaking sucks right now. Let yourself cry and take care of yourself. That was my advice to her, you know? Like, but you have to go through it. You have to feel it. Like, I think it's really can be dangerous for us to tell people to like not go through the emotions of it, because it's just you're going to stuff it down. It's going to still be there.
And it hurts. You're right. I mean, it's like everything your body's supposed to do, it doesn't do. I remember feeling completely broken and inadequate as a woman.
Yeah.
And you're not. But
No.
you have to go through that. And I don't say that because I ended up getting pregnant. I mean, you're not. That doesn't define you, but it's hard to realize that. So you did get pregnant.
I did.
And then how hard was it? You touched on this a little bit, but you're in a yoga studio where you're supposed, like, I'm there for you to zen me out. And yeah. I want to take all my uptightness in my life and my problems and my issues and my struggles and leave them at the door. And you need to inspire me to do that. How did you do that?
That was honestly the hardest part. And I'm in a class right now. I'm teaching people how to teach yoga, one of my teacher trainers and teacher trainings rather. And I was sharing that story recently. And I said, like, I mean, I don't even exactly know how I did it, except for that sometimes you're in a place to share things with your students and sometimes you're not. And I think what I told them is when you're in that place where you really don't feel like you can share what you're going through and you don't want to bring people down either, right? You just teach really good yoga, which sounds silly, but it's like, just be 100% in it. And it became therapy for me because it was like, I know how to teach. I mean, at that point I'd been teaching for years, so I could teach in my sleep. So that was good because I didn't have to think so much about it, but I could really just be with people. You know, I could call the cues. I did a lot more assisting hands-on and stuff, and just really was like, I am here for the next 75 minutes to be with these 10 people or these 20 people. And for that amount of time, I didn't have to think, I couldn't think about it, you know? And so I literally was like, I needed to come to the studio or I couldn't pull myself out of my sadness. Because otherwise at home, I was just in tears all the time or just depressed, you know? And so honestly, and I still say this about the studio, it's like, whatever I'm going through in life, good, bad, or indifferent, but certainly when things are bad, this is my saving grace. Like, it's like, thank God I have this and thank God I have to show up for other people.
Right. And I think sometimes when you're the one in that position, I would guess you just by suiting up and showing up, even though some of it is going through the motions, a lot of it is not. Like you said, you were more hands-on during that time. You know, I think healing and being there for people and inspiring them is a two-way street. And so I imagine that just being there just helped you to breathe.
Oh yeah. And I had to get out of my head. I mean, you know, you can drive yourself insane up there, you know? And yeah, it became a place where I could just like physically feel the ground and be in my physical body and with other people's physical bodies and not thinking about this sadness.
Right. So did you have a son?
I had a son. Yep. So Luke, he just turned 3 last week. Yeah.
Yay. This was really new. I mean, you guys were together for a while, and that people don't realize time frame wise. That's why I was going to ask you, because like in my mind, I'm like, he could be 7, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, little, he's young. And so this is still very new and fresh. So he's 3. And then what else has happened?
Well, I have a 14-month-old Zoe as well. So it was kind of interesting because we went through IVF and then we had, I think, 3 frozens, which, you know, the whole thing is so weird. It's like we have frozen babies. And so we saved them, but I was kind of where you were at. I was like, I'm not doing any of that shit again. So we weren't even, I wanted to have a second. My husband he wasn't against it, but he was like, I'm fine with 1. Cause he was, I think, just super shocked at how freaking hard it is to be a parent. but I really wanted a second. So we just basically decided to go off birth control and not like try. I was like, well, let's not track anything. Let's not do any of that stuff. But my doctor was like, so I switched doctors, and it was kind of interesting because when I was going through my first round of everything, one of my students, Tracy, is an OB. And so I would ask her every time I'd see her, I'd ask her stuff, and she would help me through a lot. And I never loved my doctor. And I just kept getting the sign like I should switch. And then I just never did. It was really weird. And so then my doctor moved to California. And again, I was like, there it is. There's the sign. And so I said to Tracy, would it be weird like for me to be your patient? And she was like, no. So it was unbelievable. My second pregnancy was actually really hard. Physically, it was very, very painful, but I had someone in my corner who I felt like was my advocate. And she is the one who said, more than half my patients are over 40. I would have never sent you to fertility that early. So it's just kind of interesting. But that's another huge life lesson that I try to share is like, if something doesn't feel right with you, with your body or your doctor, just switch. You don't have to have a reason. Just go on your intuition.
I totally agree. So you didn't end up using the IV. Did you do the IVF and use
No.
frozen?
No, so Tracy said, let's just see if you're ovulating. That was one of the issues I think they had in the beginning, not to get all specific about my cycle, but I wasn't ovulating every month. And so we started just to test that. And as we started to test that, we just got pregnant. I mean, we were pregnant. So the kids are 22 months apart and we were not planning that. So we were like, I literally was shocked. It was like, I felt like I was in one of those commercials, the Clear Blue commercials, I was like, what? Because it was just such a different scenario the first time with Luke. But yeah. And then, we got the note to re-up our storage fee for our frozen babies. And I was so scared to let them go because I kept thinking something was going to happen in my pregnancy. I was just living from this like crazy space of fear. But we did, we actually donated them. And so that felt good that we could donate them to science. But yeah, the whole process was just wild. Wild and scary and awful, but I now have two beautiful, healthy kiddos, and I've been able to help some women go through it. And yeah, there's value in that for sure. And I think it brought my husband and I closer together.
And so parenting is an interesting journey. So now
Exhausting.
yeah, it is definitely exhausting. I have to say in infertility, be careful what you ask for.
I know.
Because you're going to get what you want and then be like, wait, nobody gave me, there was no warning label on this. And for us too, having kids has been the greatest gift, but the greatest challenge for sure. And our oldest is 25 now. My infertility baby turned 25 in April. And so
wow.
It's a blink of an eye and it's over. And just when things get hard and you start to figure them out, it's different anyway. So, but it's the most thankless, most difficult, most outstanding thing you could ever do. So
it really is. It is. And I feel like, not to get like, too, I don't even know what the word is, but I don't know. Right now it's just a really kind of funky, weird time in the world. And so I just feel like one of my really important jobs is to raise these two humans to be good, kind people. Like we need that right now. We just need more good, kind people in the world and connecting to each other. So that's just kind of what I try to focus on. And there's so little now, but my dad said that we've got to replace ourselves and teach your kids all the values that you have. And so, I take that really seriously from that standpoint. And I know this will change, but I'm not so caught up in, I have friends that are like, going into all these like crazy preschools and kindergartens and their kids are testing to get in there and they want the best of the best. And I'm like, I just want my kids to go to a diverse school where there's people that don't look like them and not everyone's, white blonde kid, and they learn how to love and connect and be happy,
Yeah, and actually it's not too young because we're in a very disconnected society, I think, compared to we're both in our 40s. So we used to actually talk. Now you see everybody desperately trying to connect through their phone, standing around a bunch of people that they're not even making eye contact with. And so that's a big thing for me on loving coaching and podcasting and all that, just like you, is that connection to other human beings where, and our social media and the internet has allowed the world to completely open up, and yet we're connecting less than we ever have, I think,
Totally.
with the people that are right next to us. So there are good and bad things, but yeah, it's good. It's good that you're being laid back about that. So now, if you're in the Dallas area or you're traveling through, it's yogasportdallas.com.
Yep.
And then Angela can be found on angelawagnercoaching.com. And there's also a podcast. Now you started the coaching with your yoga students, and now you've opened it up more. And clearly there's lots that you can do within the coaching. What's the podcast about? The podcast is called Spark.
Yeah, it's called Spark Inspire Your Life. And I always like to think about operating from a place of inspiration versus desperation. And, I've been in those, as I've shared, desperate moments, as we all have. So the idea behind the podcast and all my coaching is, I certainly help people that are in a desperate place, but my kind of overarching goal with the podcast and the coaching is to help people elevate their lives right now, right? So like, it's most people I coach have pretty decent lives. Like they have everything they need, but there's maybe some motivation missing, or they don't wake up just super excited about things, or maybe they feel like there's something lacking in their life. And so for me, it's about finding what that is, getting clear on it. Like, what are maybe some habits that you've created in your life that aren't working? And then what can we do to help you really live the life you want to live? Because life is short. We don't know how long we have. And, it's such a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because it's true. And so I love it. We have my co-host, Nicole, who's my manager and one of my best friends. I call her the happiest person I know. And, she's taught me so much over the past, almost 4 years I've worked with her, about being such a positive, bright light. Like I tend to just kind of wake up a little negative. I always joke that it's the Italian in me. But the coaching work that I've done has really helped me to like make a very conscious decision to flip the switch every day. And I think that's why I'm successful in my yoga and my coaching, is because I'm not enlightened. When you look at me physically, and like you would never be like, oh, that girl clearly owns a yoga studio. Whenever I tell people that, they're like, really? I'm 5'2", and I'm just kind of this like normal girl. Like I'm not a vegetarian, like I don't have a lot of those traits. I used to cuss like a sailor. I try not to now because I have kids, but and then the coaching too, it's like I call it like reality based. I don't talk about a bunch of bullshit. So we have like a segment I love called Sucky Moment of the Week. So we always share, or our guests share, something crappy that happened, but then we always have an inspired action. What do we take away from that? What do we learn? How are we going to move forward from it? So that's the idea. And, we do a lot of, I share a lot of the coaching work and a lot of the tips that have helped me that I do in my programs. So there's a lot of like very tangible things people can take away, but it's anything from, like last episode, we talked about the 5 love languages. Like I love reading every self-help book in the world. I'm like a total junkie. My husband laughs at me. He's like, how is that pleasure reading? At any time, every time I look at your nightstand, you have 10 books that are like, he considers them work. And I'm like, this is fun, so I'm always reading about, diet and sleep and just anything and everything. And so I just share all that stuff. And I love it. It's just been such a great outlet for me, to be able to do that. And now I'm trying to reach out with people like you and get on other podcasts, and then have other people on my podcast, and just again connect and learn.
I love it. And that's a lot of the same stuff that I do. You want to uplift and inspire, and you also want to make people feel like they're not alone. Whatever you're going through, you're not alone. And being raw and vulnerable about your journey with infertility, even if another person's journey isn't necessarily infertility, just that raw vulnerability of those feelings helps other people realize that they're not alone in this world not talking about their stuff, and that there are ways to get through it, and that if she could do it, I can do it. And so I love that. Angela, thank you so much. So to find Angela again, it's angelawagnercoaching.com. You can hit the podcast that way, pretty much everything that way. And to find me and everything you didn't know you wanted to know about me, it's jentaylor.net. You can get the book, the podcast, everything that way. And so again, thank you for sharing your journey. Infertility is a tough one to talk about, so I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening in to Jen Taylor Rerouting. Like, share, and of course, comment. I welcome input with attitude. Get a copy of my book on Amazon, Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess, or check out my website, jentaylor.net. And if you still want more, sign up for one of my coaching packages.